Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I arrived at my sister Madison's upscale dinner party celebrating her promotion to marketing director. As guests mingled in the elegant dining room, Madison loudly announced to everyone that I had a ridiculous shellfish allergy and called it attention-seeking drama. She handed me a bowl of her famous butternut squash soup, insisting it was completely safe. I took one spoonful and immediately felt my throat closing. Among the horrified guests, tech billionaire CEO Jonathan Rivers sprang into action, pulling an EpiPen from his jacket while dialing 911, revealing he witnessed everything deliberately. The October evening felt crisp as I pulled into Madison's circular driveway in suburban Connecticut. Her Tudor-style home glowed with warm lights spilling from every window, and I could hear laughter echoing from inside. I'd driven 2 hours from Boston for what she described as a casual family dinner, though the parade of luxury cars suggested otherwise. A black Mercedes, silver Porsche, and gleaming Tesla lined the street like sentinels guarding some exclusive gathering. My name is Shane, and at 28, I've built a successful food safety consulting business, helping restaurants and institutions protect customers with severe allergies. The irony wasn't lost on me that my own sister refused to take my life-threatening shellfish allergy seriously. Madison, 3 years older, had always viewed my medical condition as an inconvenience to her social life. The mahogany front door opened before I could knock, revealing Madison in an emerald cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her auburn hair was styled in perfect waves, and diamond earrings caught the light as she smiled, that practiced smile I'd grown to distrust. Shane, finally. She air-kissed both my cheeks, her perfume overwhelming. Come meet everyone. We're celebrating my promotion to marketing director at Hartfield Communications. The foyer opened into a spacious living room where 12 well-dressed guests clustered in animated conversation. Crystal glasses clinked, and the aroma of expensive wine mixed with something savory from the kitchen. Madison guided me through introductions with theatrical flair. Everyone, this is my little brother Shane. He runs some consulting business about food safety. Her tone carried that familiar condescension, as if my work was a quirky hobby rather than a legitimate profession that generated 6 figures annually. Jonathan Rivers stood near the marble fireplace, his silver hair and confident posture commanding attention, even in casual conversation. At 52, he'd built Meridian Biotech into a pharmaceutical empire worth billions. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp and assessing. Food safety consulting? That's fascinating work, Shane. I imagine you see the intersection of public health and liability quite often. Absolutely. Most people don't realize how many lawsuits could be prevented with proper protocols. I replied, grateful for someone who understood the importance of my field. Dr. Patricia Huang, an emergency physician at Hartford Hospital, joined our conversation. Her scrubs had been replaced by a navy blazer, but her medical training showed in how she listened intently, processing information with clinical precision. Shane specializes in allergen management. Madison interjected, her voice rising. He claims to have this severe shellfish allergy that basically controls his entire life. Everything has to revolve around checking ingredients and carrying around medication like he's some kind of invalid. Heat flushed my cheeks as nearby conversations quieted. Attorney Marcus Thompson, a distinguished man with graying temples, raised an eyebrow. Food critic Elena Santos paused mid-sip of her wine, clearly uncomfortable with Madison's public mockery. It's a legitimate medical condition, Dr. Huang said quietly. Anaphylaxis can be fatal within minutes. Madison laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. Oh, please, Patricia. It's psychological. He's been milking this allergy for attention since we were kids. Watch him tonight. He'll probably claim he can sense shellfish in the air or some ridiculous nonsense. I felt the familiar weight of my EpiPen in my jacket pocket, along with antihistamines and my medical alert bracelet. These weren't props for attention. They were life-saving tools I'd needed twice before when accidental contamination nearly killed me. "Madison, could we discuss this privately?" I asked, hoping to avoid further humiliation. "Nonsense. These are my friends Shane. They should know what they're dealing with. Besides, I've prepared a completely safe dinner. Everything's been checked and double-checked specifically for your condition." The word condition dripped with skepticism. Around us, conversations resumed, but I caught sympathetic glances from several guests who clearly felt uncomfortable witnessing this family drama. Investment banker Carol Reed tried changing the subject to market trends, while software engineer David Park mentioned his own son's peanut allergy with genuine concern. Their kindness only highlighted Madison's cruelty. As we moved toward the dining room, I overheard Madison speaking to marketing executive Lisa Foster near the kitchen entrance. "I'm honestly tired of enabling his fake allergy. Maybe tonight I'll prove once and for all that it's all in his head." My blood chilled. The casual way she dismissed my medical condition felt like a betrayal. But this suggestion of deliberately testing it crossed into dangerous territory. I documented 3 severe reactions requiring emergency treatment, including one that nearly killed me during college. The dining room gleamed with Madison's expensive taste. A crystal chandelier cast warm light over the mahogany table set with fine china and silver. Place cards directed guests to their seats, and I noticed mine positioned directly across from Madison at the head of the table. "Before we sit," Madison announced, clapping her hands for attention, "I want everyone to know that I've spent hours ensuring tonight's menu accommodates my brother's extensive list of dietary restrictions." Sometimes family requires extra effort, doesn't it, Shane? Her smile never wavered, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. This wasn't the sister who used to build pillow forts with me or sneak cookies from Mom's kitchen. This was someone who resented my very existence, who saw my medical needs as a personal affront to her perfect life. Jonathan Rivers caught my eye across the room, his expression thoughtful. Something about his attention felt different, not the polite interest of other guests, but focused observation, as if he was studying the dynamics between Madison and me with scientific precision. "The first course is my famous butternut squash soup," Madison continued. "It's completely vegetarian, organic, and naturally gluten-free. Even Shane can eat it without any of his usual dramatic precautions." The emphasis on dramatic stung, but I forced a smile. Maybe I was overthinking her earlier comment. Maybe she really had taken care to prepare safe food. After our mother's death 6 months ago, we'd both been grieving and saying hurtful things we didn't mean. "That sounds wonderful," I said, hoping to rebuild some bridge between us. "I appreciate you being thoughtful about the menu." "Oh, I've been very thoughtful," Madison replied, her smile widening. "Very, very thoughtful indeed." Madison disappeared into the kitchen while guests settled into their assigned seats. The conversation flowed around wine recommendations and travel stories, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling from her earlier words. Investment banker Carol Reed asked about my consulting work, and I found myself explaining allergen cross-contamination protocols, while part of my mind remained fixated on Madison's strange behavior. The key is understanding that even microscopic amounts can trigger severe reactions, I told Dr. Huang. That's why professional kitchens need separate prep areas, dedicated utensils, and strict cleaning protocols. "How sensitive is your particular allergy?" Jonathan Rivers asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Extremely. I've had reactions from shared fryers, contaminated surfaces, even airborne particles when shellfish is being cooked nearby. The last incident required 3 EpiPens and a week in intensive care." Madison returned carrying a silver tureen, her face glowing with hostess pride. "Here we are, my signature butternut squash soup, made with organic vegetables, vegetable stock, and absolutely no seafood of any kind." She ladled the golden liquid into my bowl first, making a show of the pristine serving spoon. "Shane, I guarantee this is the safest soup you've ever been served." The soup looked innocent enough, smooth, golden, with artistic swirls of cream and pumpkin seeds as garnish. The aroma was rich and earthy, exactly what butternut squash soup should smell like. But something felt wrong. Madison's eyes held an intensity that didn't match her casual demeanor. "Thank you," I said, lifting the spoon carefully. "This smells amazing." Around the table, other guests received their portions with appreciative murmurs. Madison served herself, last settling into her chair with theatrical satisfaction. "Go ahead, Shane. Take a nice big spoonful. I worked so hard to make it perfect for you." The first spoonful hit my tongue with familiar butternut squash flavors, nutmeg, cinnamon, brown butter. For a moment, relief washed over me. Maybe I'd been paranoid. Maybe Madison really had prepared something safe. Then the aftertaste hit. My tongue began tingling immediately, that metallic sensation I'd learned to fear above all others. The distinct taste of shellfish, specifically crab, bloomed across my palate like poison spreading through my system. My throat started constricting before I could even swallow completely. "Oh God," I gasped, dropping the spoon with a clatter. "Madison, what did you put in this?" "What do you mean?" Madison asked innocently, taking a deliberate spoonful of her own serving. "It's just butternut squash soup. Exactly what I told you." My lips were already swelling, making speech difficult. "There's crab in this. I can taste it. How could you—" "Shane, stop being ridiculous!" Madison interrupted, her voice rising with manufactured concern. "You're having another one of your psychological episodes. It's all in your head just like always." But my body was already betraying the lie. Hives erupted across my arms as histamine flooded my system. My breathing became labored, each inhale a struggle against my rapidly closing airway. The familiar terror of anaphylactic shock gripped me as oxygen debt made my vision blur. Jonathan Rivers was on his feet before anyone else moved, his chair scraping back with urgent force. "He's going into anaphylactic shock. Someone call 911 immediately." Dr. Huang rushed around the table, her medical training taking over. "Shane, where's your EpiPen?" I tried to point to my jacket pocket, but my hands were shaking uncontrollably. Madison remained seated, her face a mask of feigned confusion. This is just one of his panic attacks. He does this whenever he thinks he's eaten something wrong. It's entirely psychological. "This is not psychological," Jonathan snapped, pulling his phone out with one hand while extracting an EpiPen from his jacket pocket with the other. "I carry these because my grandson has severe allergies. Patricia helped me get this administered." Dr. Huang grabbed my jacket, finding my own EpiPens while Jonathan prepared his backup device. My vision was tunneling now, the chandelier becoming a distant star as consciousness slipped away. Through the growing darkness, I heard Jonathan's voice, calm and authoritative, as he spoke to emergency dispatch. "This is Jonathan Rivers. I need paramedics immediately at 14 Maple Grove Lane in West Hartford. We have a 28-year-old male in severe anaphylactic shock. EpiPen has been administered, but he needs immediate transport." The injection hit my thigh like lightning, adrenaline surging through my system and temporarily forcing my airway open. Oxygen flooded back into my lungs as Dr. Huang checked my pulse and breathing. But I knew from experience that the EpiPen was just buying time. I needed hospital treatment immediately. Madison finally stood, her composure cracking. "This is insane. It's just soup, butternut squash soup. Shane is having some kind of breakdown." "The soup is contaminated," Jonathan said flatly, his phone still pressed to his ear as he coordinated with paramedics. "I watched you stir something into his bowl from a small container while everyone else was distracted. What did you add to his serving?" The accusation hit the room like a physical blow. Conversation stopped. Wine glasses froze halfway to lips. Madison's face went white, then flushed crimson. "You're mistaken. I would never. Shane is my brother. I would never hurt him." "I have video," Jonathan said quietly, holding up his phone. I've been recording since you served the soup because your behavior seemed suspicious. The evidence is quite clear. My breathing was still labored despite the EpiPen, and I could feel my blood pressure dropping. Dr. Huang was taking my pulse when the front door burst open and paramedics rushed in with their equipment. 28-year-old male severe anaphylaxis, 1 EpiPen administered approximately 4 minutes ago and now malaise, Dr. Huang reported with clinical efficiency. Pulse is rapid and thready. Blood pressure dropping requires immediate transport. The paramedics moved with practiced speed, starting an IV and preparing me for transport. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I caught a glimpse of Madison's face. Gone was any pretense of concern. Her expression showed pure panic, not for my well-being, but for herself. "Shane, tell them you're fine," she pleaded. "Tell them this is just anxiety. You don't need to go to the hospital." But I couldn't speak. The second wave of the reaction was hitting my throat, closing again despite the epinephrine. The paramedics worked quickly, administering additional medications as they wheeled me toward the ambulance. Jonathan followed alongside the stretcher. "I'm coming with you to the hospital. I have evidence that needs to be preserved, and I witnessed everything that happened here." Dr. Huang climbed into the ambulance without invitation. "I'm a physician at Hartford Hospital. This patient needs continuous monitoring during transport." As the ambulance doors closed, I saw Madison standing in her doorway, still wearing that emerald dress, watching her brother being taken away in critical condition from food she deliberately contaminated. The irony wasn't lost on me that the sister who'd mocked my dramatic medical condition had just proved exactly how real and dangerous it was. The 8-minute ride to Hartford Hospital felt like hours. Dr. Huang monitored my vital signs while Jonathan documented everything on his phone. My condition, the timeline, even recording his own witness statement. My blood pressure kept dropping despite the IV medications, and twice more my breathing became so labored that the paramedics had to intervene. "His reactions are typically this severe?" Dr. Huang asked, noting my medical alert bracelet. I managed a weak nod. This wasn't my first rodeo with anaphylaxis, but it was definitely the most severe. Previous reactions had been accidental contamination, shared cooking surfaces, mislabeled ingredients, honest mistakes. This was deliberate poisoning by someone who knew exactly what would happen. The emergency room team was waiting when we arrived. Dr. Huang's colleague, Dr. Michael Foster, took over my care, administering additional epinephrine and starting aggressive treatment for severe anaphylactic shock. Blood was drawn immediately for allergen testing and documentation. "We need to preserve evidence," Jonathan told Dr. Foster. This was deliberate contamination. The patient's sister admitted she'd tested his allergy, and I have video evidence of her adding something to his food. "We'll document everything," Dr. Foster assured him. "The blood work will show exactly what allergens were consumed and in what quantities. This level of reaction suggests significant contamination." As the medical team worked to stabilize me, I realized how close I'd come to dying. Without Jonathan's quick action and Dr. Huang's expertise, Madison's test would have killed me. The EpiPen had bought time, but my sister had essentially served me poison at her dinner party. The worst part wasn't the physical trauma, it was the emotional devastation of realizing that someone I'd loved and trusted had deliberately tried to harm me. This wasn't a prank or ignorance about allergies. This was calculated attempted murder disguised as sisterly skepticism. 2 days later, I was still in Hartford Hospital's cardiac monitoring unit when Detective Sarah Coleman arrived with her notepad and serious expression. My throat remained raw from the breathing tube they'd inserted during the worst of the reaction, and IV lines still delivered antihistamines and steroids to control lingering inflammation. "Mr. Shane Thompson, I'm investigating the incident at your sister's dinner party. Several witnesses have provided statements suggesting this wasn't accidental contamination. Dr. Foster had explained that my blood work revealed massive levels of crab protein enough to kill someone with my sensitivity level 3 times over. The contamination was so severe that it couldn't possibly have been accidental cross-contact. Jonathan Rivers provided video evidence. Detective Coleman continued showing me her tablet screen. This footage clearly shows your sister adding something from a small container to your soup bowl, while other guests were distracted. Watching the video felt surreal. There was Madison smiling and chatting with guests, while deliberately stirring what appeared to be crab stock into my serving. The footage was crystal clear, no ambiguity about her actions or intent. She told several witnesses beforehand that she intended to test your allergy, the detective added. Food critic Elena Santos recorded part of the conversation on her phone when she realized what was being discussed. Elena's recording played Madison's voice with chilling clarity. "I'm going to prove once and for all that Shane's allergy is fake. Tonight he's going to eat shellfish and nothing will happen because it's all psychological manipulation." Dr. Patricia Huang entered during the interview, having stopped by to check on my condition. Her medical testimony would be crucial for the case. "Detective, I documented everything from my perspective as a physician," Dr. Huang said. "The timeline, symptom progression, and severity all support deliberate poisoning. In my 15 years of emergency medicine, I've never seen contamination this extensive from accidental exposure." But Detective Coleman's investigation had uncovered something even more disturbing. Insurance investigator David Park had been conducting his own inquiry after the hospital reported potential foul play. "Mr. Thompson, were you aware that your sister recently increased the life insurance policy on you, that she's the beneficiary of—" My blood chilled. "What are you talking about?" David Park consulted his files. 3 months ago, Madison Thompson submitted paperwork increasing your policy from $50,000 to $300,000. The signature appears to be forged, will need handwriting analysis, but the initial assessment suggests fraud. The room spun despite my lying flat in bed. Madison hadn't just tried to kill me on impulse, she'd been planning this for months. The dinner party wasn't a test of my allergy. It was attempted murder for insurance money. "There's more," Detective Coleman said grimly. "Our financial investigation revealed that Madison has been stealing from your mother's estate. Bank records show unauthorized transfers totaling $67,000 from accounts that should have been split between you and your sister." Hospital social worker Linda Garcia had been listening quietly in the corner. Now she stepped forward with professional concern. "Shane, I need to ask directly, have there been previous incidents where Madison exposed you to allergens?" The question unlocked memories I'd tried to suppress. At Mom's funeral 6 months ago, Madison brought food from a seafood restaurant to the reception. She insisted I try her special salad and seemed disappointed when I declined. Later, I found out it had been prepared in the same kitchen as lobster dishes. "So she's tested this before," Detective Coleman noted. "The funeral incident was probably a trial run to see how you'd react to potential contamination." Dr. Huang checked my chart and frowned. "Your medical records show an unexplained minor reaction around that time frame. You came to the emergency room with mild symptoms but couldn't identify the trigger. Suddenly, I remembered I'd felt slightly unwell after the funeral reception, but attributed it to grief and stress. Madison had hugged me goodbye that day, seeming almost disappointed that I was fine. She's been planning this systematically." I whispered, the full horror of the situation settling over me. The insurance fraud testing my reactions, researching allergens, this dinner party was supposed to be my murder. Financial forensics expert Rachel Brooks arrived that afternoon with evidence that made everything worse. Madison's digital footprint revealed months of premeditation that went far beyond simple sibling resentment. "Your sister has been researching allergen contamination methods for 4 months, Rachel explained, spreading printouts across my hospital bed table. Browser history shows searches for untraceable food poisoning, how to trigger severe allergic reactions, and making anaphylaxis look accidental. The search queries were damning: how much shellfish to kill someone with allergies, Can food contamination be detected in autopsy? Life insurance payout timeframes. And dozens of similar inquiries that painted a picture of calculated murder. She also researched your consulting business extensively, Rachel continued. There are records of her contacting your clients trying to undermine your professional reputation by claiming your expertise was based on fake personal experience with allergies. Detective Coleman showed me phone records revealing calls between Madison and her gambling associates. Your sister owes $94,000 to some very dangerous people. The insurance money wasn't just greed, it was desperation. The pieces fell together with horrible clarity. Madison's financial desperation from gambling debts had led her to view my life insurance policy as the solution to her problems. The forged signature increasing the payout, the systematic research into allergen contamination. The careful planning of the dinner party. Everything was designed to murder me while maintaining plausible deniability. But she made one critical mistake, Detective Coleman said. She didn't account for Jonathan Rivers being at the dinner party. His pharmaceutical background made him immediately suspicious of her behavior, and his decision to record everything provided undeniable evidence. Dr. Foster returned with final blood work results that sealed Madison's fate. The crab protein levels in Shane's system were astronomical, over 40 times what would be present from accidental cross-contamination. Someone added pure crab stock or extract to his food in massive quantities. As evidence mounted, I realized how close Madison had come to succeeding. Without Jonathan's quick intervention and Dr. Huang's expertise, I would have died at that dinner party. Madison would have played the grieving sister, collected the insurance money, and probably never faced suspicion for what appeared to be an allergic reaction during a family meal. The betrayal cut deeper than the physical trauma. This wasn't just attempted murder, it was the systematic destruction of trust family bonds and everything I'd believed about the person who was supposed to love and protect me. Madison hadn't just tried to kill me. She'd tried to make my death look like my own medical condition was to blame. What happens now? I asked Detective Coleman. Now we arrest your sister for attempted murder insurance fraud and theft. The evidence is overwhelming, and the district attorney is very interested in this case. As I lay in that hospital bed, surrounded by the evidence of my sister's betrayal, I realized that surviving her poisoning attempt was just the beginning. The real fight would be ensuring she faced full consequences for her actions, while I rebuilt my life from the wreckage of a family that had never really existed. Attorney Marcus Thompson visited my hospital room on day 3. Still shaken by what he'd witnessed at Madison's dinner party. His law firm specialized in personal injury cases, but this situation fell into criminal territory that demanded careful coordination between civil and criminal proceedings. Shane, I've never seen anything like what happened at that dinner party, Marcus said, settling into the visitor's chair beside my bed. In 30 years of legal practice, I've handled plenty of family disputes. But this was attempted murder in front of 12 witnesses. The bandage on my arm where multiple IVs had been placed reminded me how close Madison had come to succeeding. Dr. Foster had explained that without immediate medical intervention, the amount of allergen in my system would have killed me within 15 minutes. I want to pursue every legal avenue available, I told Marcus. Criminal charges, civil liability, recovery of the stolen inheritance money, everything. Marcus nodded grimly. The evidence is stronger than most cases I've seen. Jonathan's video documentation alone would be sufficient for conviction, but we have corroborating witness testimony, medical evidence, and now digital forensics showing premeditation. Detective Coleman had shared Madison's complete browser history with Marcus's investigative team. The searches painted a picture of systematic planning that went far beyond sibling rivalry. Madison had researched allergen contamination with scientific precision, studying medical journals about anaphylaxis, investigating food preparation methods that would maximize protein transfer, and even reviewing autopsy procedures to understand how investigators detect poisoning. She spent weeks perfecting her method, Private investigator Tony Rodriguez explained during our case planning meeting. Security footage from 3 different grocery stores shows her purchasing crab stock, shellfish extract, and even live crabs on separate occasions. She was experimenting with concentration levels. The revelation made my stomach turn. Madison hadn't just decided impulsively to test my allergy, she'd conducted research and development on the most effective way to kill me. Tony discovered something else disturbing, Marcus continued. Your sister practiced this contamination method multiple times using food she served to her boyfriend, Trevor. Trevor Morrison had been questioned by police after investigators found text messages between him and Madison discussing solving the Shane problem permanently. His cooperation with authorities revealed the extent of Madison's planning. She would add tiny amounts of shellfish extract to Trevor's food and time how long it took him to notice the taste, Tony explained. Trevor doesn't have allergies, so there was no danger, but she was calibrating the amount needed to contaminate food without being immediately detectable. The text messages between Madison and Trevor were damning evidence of conspiracy. Screenshots showed conversations spanning 3 months. Madison, I need Trevor to disappear. Permanently. Trevor, insurance money would solve all our problems. Madison, working on the allergy angle. It has to look natural. Trevor, how much would trigger a fatal reaction? Madison, research says even microscopic amounts can kill him. I'm testing concentration levels. Financial forensics expert Rachel Brooks had traced Madison's gambling addiction to its source, an illegal sports betting operation run by dangerous criminals who'd threatened physical violence for unpaid debts. Phone records showed increasingly desperate conversations between Madison and her creditors as deadlines approached. Your sister was facing broken bones, or worse if she didn't pay up, Rachel explained. The insurance money wasn't greed, it was survival, at least in her mind. She viewed killing you as self-defense against her gambling creditors. But the most disturbing evidence came from Madison's personal journal discovered during a search warrant of her home. Handwritten entries detailed her resentment toward me dating back to childhood, escalating to pure hatred after our mother's death. March 15th. Shane got Mom's antique jewelry collection. It should have been mine. He doesn't even appreciate vintage pieces like I do. April 3rd. Shane's consulting business is thriving while I struggle with debt. He always was Mom's favorite, and now he's reaping the benefits. May 22nd. If Shane were gone, all my problems would disappear. The insurance money, Mom's remaining estate, even his business contacts, everything should be mine. June 18th, researched allergen contamination today. It's surprisingly easy to trigger fatal reactions. Shane trusts me completely. He'd never suspect his own sister. Reading those entries while recovering from her poisoning attempt felt like psychological assault. The sister I'd grieved losing to gambling addiction had actually been plotting my murder for months while maintaining loving pretenses. Marcus assembled a legal team that included forensic accountants, medical experts, and digital investigation specialists. Our case would demonstrate not only Madison's attempted murder, but the systematic financial fraud she'd committed against our mother's estate and my personal accounts. She's been stealing from you for over a year, forensic accountant William Chen reported. Forged signatures on banking documents, unauthorized access to investment accounts, even fraudulent credit applications using your information. The total theft exceeds $120,000. The financial crimes added federal charges to Madison's legal troubles. Identity theft, wire fraud, and insurance fraud carried sentences that could exceed the attempted murder charges in some jurisdictions. Jonathan Rivers had become an unexpected ally in building the case. His pharmaceutical industry connections provided expert witnesses who could testify about allergen contamination and the deliberate nature of Madison's actions. In my experience with drug development and safety protocols, Jonathan explained during a deposition the level of contamination in Shane's soup required specific knowledge and deliberate action. This wasn't accidental exposure. It was calculated poisoning designed to maximize harm. Dr. Patricia Huang's medical testimony provided clinical evidence of the attack's severity. Her documentation of my condition treatment requirements and near-death experience would be crucial for establishing attempted murder rather than simple assault. The patient presented with the most severe anaphylactic reaction I've encountered in 15 years of emergency medicine. Dr. Huang stated in her formal report, "The allergen concentration was sufficient to cause death within minutes without immediate intervention. This was not accidental contamination." As evidence accumulated, Madison's defense strategy became clear through her attorney's public statements. She planned to claim mental health issues, gambling addiction, and financial desperation as mitigating factors while denying intent to kill. But Tony Rodriguez's investigation had discovered the most damaging evidence. Yet Madison had attempted this before, and I wasn't her first victim. Your sister's college roommate died from a severe allergic reaction during their senior year, Tony revealed during our final case preparation meeting. The death was ruled accidental, but I found evidence suggesting Madison knew about her roommate's tree nut allergy and deliberately contaminated her food during an argument about money. The cold case investigation was being reopened based on our evidence. Madison's pattern of using allergens as weapons went back over a decade, suggesting a level of premeditation and calculation that made her incredibly dangerous to anyone with food allergies. She's essentially a serial killer who uses allergens instead of conventional weapons, Marcus summarized. The evidence shows systematic targeting of vulnerable individuals, careful planning, and complete disregard for human life. Our legal strategy would present Madison not as a desperate gambler who made a tragic mistake, but as a calculated murderer who viewed other people's medical conditions as opportunities for profit. The dinner party wasn't a moment of poor judgment. It was the culmination of months of planning to commit the perfect murder. District Attorney Carol Martinez called a press conference 3 weeks after my poisoning, standing behind a podium loaded with evidence boxes as cameras captured every word. Her announcement would make Madison's case a national news story and set legal precedent for allergen-based attempted murder charges. Today we're filing attempted murder in the first degree against Madison Claire Thompson for the deliberate poisoning of her brother Shane Thompson using his known severe food allergies, DA Martinez announced. This case represents a new category of domestic violence that exploits medical vulnerabilities to commit serious crimes. The charges were extensive attempted murder conspiracy to commit murder insurance fraud, identity theft, grand larceny, and elder abuse for stealing from our mother's estate. If convicted on all counts, Madison faced 45 years to life in prison. Madison's arrest at Hartfield Communications became a social media spectacle. Security footage showed her being led away in handcuffs, while co-workers watched in shock. The marketing promotion she'd celebrated at the dinner party was immediately revoked, and her employment terminated for moral turpitude. Her boyfriend Trevor Morrison was arrested simultaneously on conspiracy charges. Text messages revealed his active participation in planning my murder, including researching life insurance policies and discussing methods of allergen contamination. His cooperation with prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges provided additional evidence against Madison. The civil lawsuit Marcus filed sought damages for medical expenses, lost income, emotional distress, and punitive awards. My initial hospital stay alone generated $48,000 in bills, not including ongoing therapy for post-traumatic stress and trust issues stemming from family betrayal. The psychological trauma of attempted murder by a family member requires specialized treatment, explained Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the trauma therapist treating me for complex PTSD. Shane is dealing with not only the physical assault, but the complete destruction of family bonds and trust in basic safety around loved ones. My consulting business had suffered during my hospitalization and recovery period. Clients needed immediate responses to food safety emergencies, and my near-death experience had delayed several projects worth over $30,000 in lost revenue. Jonathan Rivers surprised everyone by offering to testify as the star witness for both criminal and civil proceedings. His video evidence and pharmaceutical expertise would provide unshakable credibility to our case. "I've spent decades developing medications to save lives," Jonathan stated during his victim impact interview. "Watching someone deliberately use medical knowledge to harm their own family member was the most disturbing thing I've witnessed in 52 years. Food critic Elena Santos wrote a viral article for her magazine titled, "When Family Dinner Becomes Attempted Murder, the Madison Thompson Case." Her first-hand account of the dinner party reached millions of readers and sparked national conversations about food allergies and domestic violence. "I watched a sister serve poison to her brother while smiling and chatting about wine pairings," Elena wrote. The casual nature of her attempted murder was more chilling than any horror movie I've ever seen. The article destroyed Madison's social reputation throughout Connecticut's professional circles. Her name became synonymous with betrayal and calculated violence, making future employment in marketing or public relations virtually impossible. Madison's legal defense strategy emerged through court filings and media statements from her attorney, Robert Sterling. They planned to argue that gambling addiction and financial desperation had caused a mental health crisis that impaired her judgment during a moment of panic. Morehouse, Ms. Thompson was facing threats of physical violence from illegal gambling creditors, Sterling told reporters. Her actions, while inexcusable, were the result of severe psychological distress and addiction-related mental health issues. But Tony Rodriguez's investigation had uncovered evidence that demolished any sympathy defense. Madison's journal entries showed clear premeditation and enjoyment of her planning process, not desperation or mental health crisis. She wrote detailed fantasies about my funeral. I told Marcus during case preparation. Multiple entries describing how sad she'd pretend to be while collecting insurance money and inheriting Mom's remaining assets. This wasn't desperation, it was calculated greed. The journal entries became prosecution exhibits that demonstrated Madison's state of mind during the planning phases. July 10th practiced looking devastated in the mirror today. When Shane dies, I need to appear properly grief-stricken for the insurance investigation. August 2nd calculated the exact timing for maximum inheritance benefit. If Shane dies before the estate settlement, everything comes to me automatically. September 5th, Trevor suggested we take a romantic vacation with the insurance money, planning a trip to Italy for after the funeral. These writings showed sophisticated planning and anticipation of profit, contradicting any claim of impaired judgment or mental health crisis. Madison's gambling debts led investigators to additional criminal associates who provided testimony about her character and financial desperation. Loan shark Vincent Caruso described Madison as cold-blooded and calculating in her discussions about raising money. She talked about her brother like he was a business problem to be solved. Caruso testified during pre-trial hearings. Never showed any emotion about family or relationships, just calculated how much his death would be worth. As the case gained national media attention, other families with similar experiences contacted authorities. Support groups for people with severe allergies shared stories of family members who'd tested their conditions with dangerous consequences. Madison Thompson represents a type of domestic abuser who uses medical vulnerabilities as weapons, explained domestic violence expert Dr. Catherine Ross. This case will help victims recognize that deliberately exposing someone to known allergens is attempted murder, not testing or skepticism. The American Food Allergy Association issued statements supporting our case and calling for stronger legal protections against allergen-based violence. Their advocacy would influence similar cases nationwide and establish legal precedent for treating deliberate contamination as serious assault. My recovery progressed slowly as the legal proceedings unfolded. Physical therapy helped rebuild strength lost during the hospitalization, while psychological therapy addressed the complex trauma of family betrayal. Dr. Walsh explained that attempted murder by a trusted family member created unique healing challenges. Shane's case involves multiple layers of betrayal, Dr. Walsh noted in her treatment summary. The physical assault, financial theft, violation of trust, and destruction of family bonds require comprehensive therapeutic intervention. Insurance companies began investigating similar cases after our lawsuit demonstrated the deliberate nature of Madison's actions. Life insurance fraud involving staged allergen attacks became a recognized crime category that investigators now actively monitor. As Madison's trial date approached, the evidence against her had grown overwhelming. Video documentation, digital forensics, witness testimony, medical proof, and financial records created an unbeatable prosecution case that would likely result in maximum sentencing. The question wasn't whether Madison would be convicted, but how severely she'd be punished for transforming family dinner into attempted murder. The courthouse steps were crowded with media crews when Madison's trial began in early December. Court TV had picked up live coverage, and the case had become a national symbol of domestic violence, using medical vulnerabilities. I walked past reporters with Marcus Thompson, trying to ignore the cameras and questions shouted in my direction. Judge Harold Morrison presided over the proceedings with stern efficiency. His reputation for handling complex criminal cases with fairness, but zero tolerance for manipulation, made him ideal for prosecuting Madison's calculated crimes. District Attorney Carol Martinez opened with a presentation that methodically destroyed any sympathy for Madison's position. Projection screens showed the evidence timeline, months of research, systematic planning, financial fraud, and finally attempted murder at a dinner party. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case isn't about gambling addiction or financial desperation, DA Martinez stated during opening arguments. This is about a calculated murderer who spent months planning to kill her own brother for insurance money, then served him poison while smiling and discussing wine. Madison sat beside her attorney, Robert Sterling, wearing a conservative navy suit that couldn't disguise the cold calculation in her eyes. She'd lost significant weight during pretrial detention, but her expression showed no remorse, only anger at being caught. Jonathan Rivers testified first, his pharmaceutical expertise and unshakable credibility establishing the foundation of the prosecution's case. The video evidence played on courtroom screens showing Madison deliberately contaminating my soup while chatting casually with other guests. The defendant's behavior was consistent with someone implementing a carefully planned murder, Jonathan testified. She showed no surprise or concern when the victim collapsed, only irritation that her scheme was being exposed. Dr. Patricia Huang's medical testimony described my condition with clinical precision that made several jurors visibly uncomfortable. The severity of anaphylactic shock, the timeline of near-death progression, and the massive allergen contamination painted a picture of deliberate poisoning designed to kill. In 15 years of emergency medicine, I've never encountered allergen contamination this extensive from accidental exposure, Dr. Huang testified. The concentration levels required deliberate addition of pure allergen extract in massive quantities. Elena Santos recounted overhearing Madison's pre-dinner statements about testing my allergy and proving it was psychological manipulation. Her testimony established premeditation and intent to cause harm. The defendant specifically stated she intended to prove the victim's allergy was fake by making him eat shellfish, Elena testified. She expressed confidence that nothing would happen because she believed the medical condition was fabricated for attention. But the most damaging testimony came from forensic digital expert Rachel Brooks, who presented Madison's complete online research history spanning 4 months of murder planning. The defendant researched allergen contamination methods with scientific precision. Rachel testified, displaying search queries on the courtroom screens. Queries included lethal dose shellfish allergen, undetectable food poisoning methods, and making allergic reactions appear accidental. Madison's journal entries were read aloud by DA Martinez, each page revealing deeper levels of calculation and anticipated enjoyment of my death. The courtroom fell silent as the prosecution displayed fantasies about funeral arrangements and spending insurance money. September 15th. Shane trusts me completely. He'll never suspect his loving sister is planning his death. Martinez read from Madison's handwriting. The dinner party will be perfect. Witnesses will see me serving him safe food right before he dies from his medical condition. Detective Sarah Coleman testified about the financial investigation revealing the extent of Madison's theft from our mother's estate and fraudulent insurance applications. Bank records showed systematic embezzlement designed to maximize profit from my anticipated death. The defendant had been stealing from family accounts for over a year, Detective Coleman testified. The life insurance fraud and estate theft suggest planning that extended far beyond the immediate murder attempt. Madison's defense strategy crumbled under cross-examination. Attorney Robert Sterling tried arguing mental health impairment from gambling addiction, but the prosecution's evidence showed calculated planning over months that demonstrated clear criminal intent. Gambling addiction doesn't cause people to research murder methods, DA Martinez pointed out during cross-examination of Sterling's expert witness. The defendant's actions showed sophisticated planning, not impaired judgment. Trevor Morrison's cooperation with prosecutors provided devastating insider testimony about Madison's planning process. His plea agreement required complete honesty about conversations and planning sessions. Madison talked about Shane's death like it was a business transaction, Trevor testified. She calculated insurance payouts, inheritance timelines, and even vacation plans using the money from killing her brother. The prosecution presented evidence that Madison had attempted allergen attacks before including the suspicious death of her college roommate and the minor reaction I'd experienced after our mother's funeral. Pattern evidence suggested serial predatory behavior targeting people with known allergies. Private investigator Tony Rodriguez testified about discovering Madison's practice sessions with Trevor, timing how long it took to detect shellfish contamination in food. This evidence proved systematic preparation rather than impulsive action. The defendant conducted multiple test runs to perfect her contamination method, Rodriguez testified. She approached murder with the same attention to detail most people use for cooking recipes. My victim impact testimony was scheduled for the final day of prosecution evidence. Sitting in the witness box, looking at Madison across the courtroom, I felt the full weight of her betrayal. Madison wasn't just my sister. She was the person I trusted most in the world after our mother died. I testified. She used that trust to plan my murder while pretending to grieve with me, support me, and care about my well-being. The emotional impact on the jury was visible, as I described not just the physical trauma of nearly dying, but the psychological destruction of discovering that family love was a facade hiding murderous calculation. The worst part isn't that someone tried to kill me, I continued. It's that the person I would have called for help, comfort, and protection was actually my attacker. Madison destroyed not just my health, but my ability to trust family relationships. Defense attorney Sterling's closing argument attempted to generate sympathy by emphasizing Madison's gambling addiction and financial desperation, but the evidence of premeditation and calculated cruelty overwhelmed any mitigating factors. Oh, Ms. Thompson made terrible choices under extreme pressure, Sterling argued. But this was not cold-blooded murder. It was panic-driven decision-making by someone facing threats of violence. DA Martinez's closing argument demolished the desperation defense by highlighting the months of planning, research, and anticipation evident in Madison's actions and writings. The defendant spent 4 months researching how to murder her brother using his medical condition, Martinez summarized. She practiced contamination methods, forged insurance documents, stole inheritance money, and threw a dinner party specifically to implement her murder plan. This was the most calculated crime I've prosecuted in 20 years. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes before returning guilty verdicts on all charges: attempted murder in the first-degree conspiracy, insurance fraud, identity theft, grand larceny, and elder abuse. Madison showed no emotion as each verdict was read, staring straight ahead with the same cold expression I'd seen when she served me poisoned soup. Judge Morrison scheduled sentencing for the following week, but his comments during verdict acceptance suggested Madison would receive maximum penalties. The evidence in this case demonstrates a level of calculated cruelty that shocks the conscience, Judge Morrison stated. Using family trust and medical vulnerabilities to attempt murder represents domestic violence of the most heinous variety. Madison's sentencing hearing became another media spectacle, as national coverage highlighted the precedent-setting nature of allergen-based attempted murder convictions. Advocacy groups for domestic violence survivors and people with food allergies packed the courtroom gallery. This case sends a message that deliberate allergen exposure is attempted murder, not testing or skepticism, the announced advocate Dr. Catherine Ross outside the courthouse. Victims of this type of medical abuse finally have legal protection and recognition. Judge Morrison sentenced Madison to 12 years for attempted murder, plus additional consecutive terms for conspiracy, fraud, and theft charges. The total sentence of 18 years with eligibility for parole after 14 years reflected the maximum allowable punishment. Ms. Thompson planned and implemented a scheme to murder her own brother for financial gain. Judge Morrison stated during sentencing, "The calculated nature of her crimes and complete lack of remorse warrant the highest penalties available under law." Madison's final statement to the court revealed the depth of her narcissistic worldview and complete absence of accountability. "Shane always was dramatic about his medical problems," Madison told the judge. "If he'd just been reasonable about his supposed allergies, none of this would have happened. He brought this on himself by being so demanding and difficult." The statement confirmed everything the prosecution had argued about Madison's character and mindset. Even facing prison, she blamed me for nearly dying from her deliberate poisoning. As Madison was led away in handcuffs, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction, relief, and sadness. Justice had been served. But the sister I'd once loved was truly gone, replaced by a calculating predator who'd viewed my medical condition as an opportunity for profit. The trial's conclusion marked the end of Madison's freedom. But it was just the beginning of my journey toward healing from the deepest betrayal imaginable. 6 months after Madison's sentencing, I stood in the bright conference room of my expanded consulting business addressing a group of restaurant managers about allergen safety protocols. The irony wasn't lost on me that nearly dying from deliberate contamination had transformed my work into a platform for preventing similar tragedies. The most important thing to understand about severe food allergies is that they're not preferences or minor inconveniences, I told the attentive audience. They're life-threatening medical conditions that require absolute respect and careful protocols to prevent accidental or, in my case, deliberate exposure. My business had grown dramatically since the trial publicity brought national attention to allergen safety issues. Restaurants, schools, and institutions across the country sought consulting services to protect customers and avoid liability. The tragic circumstances that launched this expansion felt bittersweet, but the positive impact on public safety provided meaning to my trauma. The civil lawsuit settlement had provided $290,000 in damages, covering medical expenses, lost income, emotional distress, and punitive awards. More importantly, it established legal precedent for treating allergen-based assault as serious criminal and civil liability. Shane's case changed how courts and insurance companies view deliberate allergen exposure, explained attorney Marcus Thompson during a legal conference on domestic violence. We now have framework for prosecuting these crimes and compensating victims appropriately. Jonathan Rivers had become an unexpected friend and business advisor. His pharmaceutical industry connections opened doors to research funding and advocacy opportunities that expanded my platform beyond individual consulting. Your experience gives you unique credibility in discussions about medical vulnerability and personal safety, Jonathan said during one of our quarterly breakfast meetings. People listen when you explain how allergies can be weaponized by predatory individuals. Together, we'd established the Rivers Foundation for Allergy Safety, providing free EpiPens to low-income families and funding research into improved emergency treatments. The foundation's work honored Jonathan's quick thinking that saved my life while creating positive change from traumatic circumstances. Dr. Jennifer Walsh had helped me process the complex psychological aftermath of family betrayal and attempted murder. Recovery involved not just healing from physical trauma, but rebuilding my ability to trust relationships and feel safe in social situations. Shane's case involved multiple layers of trauma that required specialized treatment approaches. Dr. Walsh explained during a conference presentation about medical abuse. Family-based attempts to exploit medical vulnerabilities create unique healing challenges that standard therapy protocols don't address. The therapy process had been difficult, but transformative. Learning to distinguish between healthy family relationships and manipulative predatory behavior required rebuilding my entire framework for understanding trust and safety. Madison's imprisonment provided peace of mind that she couldn't harm other people with medical vulnerabilities. Prison updates indicated she remained unrepentant, blaming everyone except herself for the consequences of her actions. Her lack of remorse confirmed the prosecution's characterization of her as a calculating sociopath rather than someone who'd made desperate mistakes. Some people are fundamentally dangerous to vulnerable individuals. I'd learned to accept. Family relationships don't automatically make someone trustworthy or safe character, and empathy determine whether someone protects or exploits medical conditions. Trevor Morrison had served 8 months in county jail before being released on probation. His cooperation with prosecutors had earned reduced charges, but the conspiracy conviction would follow him permanently. Last reports suggested he'd moved across the country and avoided contact with anyone connected to Madison's case. The most rewarding development had been meeting Jennifer Walsh, not my therapist, but the allergy researcher who shared her name. Dr. Jennifer Walsh specialized in developing improved emergency treatments for anaphylactic shock. Our professional collaboration on foundation research had evolved into genuine friendship and eventually romance. Jennifer understands the medical realities of my condition without treating me as fragile or overly cautious, I told Jonathan during one of our advisory meetings. She's witnessed severe allergic reactions in clinical settings, so she appreciates proper precautions rather than viewing them as dramatic behavior. Our relationship represented everything Madison had tried to destroy: trust, mutual respect, genuine care for each other's well-being, and appreciation for medical needs, rather than exploitation of vulnerabilities. The Foundation's work had expanded beyond emergency medication access to include education programs about recognizing medical abuse in family relationships. Too many people with allergies, chronic conditions, or disabilities suffered exploitation from trusted individuals who viewed their vulnerabilities as opportunities. Medical conditions make people targets for specific types of domestic violence, explained domestic violence expert Dr. Catherine Ross during our joint presentation to healthcare providers. Shane's case demonstrated how predators use medical knowledge to harm vulnerable family members while maintaining plausible deniability. Our educational materials helped healthcare workers recognize warning signs of medical abuse. Family members who downplay serious conditions attempt to test allergies or medications control access to emergency treatments, or seem disappointed when medical emergencies are successfully treated. My speaking engagements at medical conferences had become opportunities to honor the healthcare providers who'd saved my life. Dr. Patricia Huang's quick recognition of deliberate poisoning and professional documentation had been crucial for prosecution success. Emergency medicine requires not just clinical skills, but recognition of intentional harm disguised as medical emergencies. Dr. Huang explained during our joint presentation about allergen-based violence. Shane's case taught our entire department to document suspicious circumstances and preserve evidence of potential crimes. The restaurant industry had embraced allergen safety training with new urgency after learning how deliberate contamination could create legal liability. My consulting work now included not just accidental cross-contamination prevention, but recognition of intentional food tampering by staff or customers. Understanding that some people deliberately exploit allergies helps restaurant managers implement security protocols alongside safety measures. I explained during a national food service conference, protecting customers requires awareness that not all contamination is accidental. The expansion of my business from individual consulting to national advocacy felt like transforming personal trauma into broader social benefit. Madison's attempt to destroy my life had instead amplified my platform for protecting others with similar vulnerabilities. Success isn't just surviving what happened to me, I realized during quiet moments of reflection. Success is using that experience to prevent similar tragedies for other families dealing with medical conditions. The foundation had provided emergency medication to over 3,000 families and funded research that improved emergency response protocols in school systems nationwide. Corporate partnerships with pharmaceutical companies had expanded our reach while maintaining independence from profit motives. Shane's foundation represents the best possible outcome from traumatic circumstances, Jonathan observed during our annual board meeting. Personal pain, transformed into protection for vulnerable populations, creates meaning from suffering. My relationship with extended family had required careful navigation after Madison's crimes. Some relatives struggled to understand how family bonds could hide predatory behavior, while others rallied to provide support during recovery. Learning to distinguish between healthy family relationships and toxic manipulation became essential for my emotional healing. I explained during therapy discussions about family reconstruction. Some relatives deserve trust and closeness, while others require boundaries and caution. The experience had taught me that family titles don't automatically confer trustworthiness, just as medical conditions don't automatically make someone a victim. Personal safety requires careful assessment of character and behavior, rather than assumptions based on relationships or appearances. I learned that real family protects each other's lives, not threatens them. Had become my standard response when people asked about lessons learned from Madison's betrayal. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold someone accountable for trying to destroy you. Justice hadn't been revenge against Madison. It had been ensuring a dangerous person couldn't harm others, while I rebuilt my life stronger than before. Her imprisonment protected future victims, while my advocacy work honored the healthcare providers and witnesses who'd saved my life. The best response to someone trying to kill you isn't hatred or revenge, I'd concluded after months of therapy and reflection. It's living fully protecting others from similar harm and building relationships with people who value your safety and well-being. As I finished my presentation to the restaurant managers and fielded questions about implementing allergen protocols, I felt gratitude for the unexpected journey from near victim to national advocate. Madison's attempt to end my life had instead expanded my purpose and impact beyond anything I'd imagined possible. The audience's engaged questions and commitment to protecting vulnerable customers represented victory over the mindset that had driven Madison to view medical conditions as opportunities for exploitation. Education and awareness could prevent future tragedies while honoring the memory of trust that had been destroyed. Walking to my car after the presentation, I reflected on how completely my life had transformed since that terrible dinner party. The sister who'd tried to kill me was serving prison time while I was building relationships with people who valued my safety and success. The foundation's work was expanding internationally, and my relationship with Jennifer was deepening into something beautiful and supportive. Justice had been served, healing was progressing, and the future held possibilities that Madison's murderous plan had tried to destroy. Her betrayal had revealed the depths of human cruelty, but the response from healthcare providers, legal professionals, and advocacy communities had demonstrated the heights of human compassion and protection. Sometimes the people who try to destroy us end up strengthening us in ways we never expected had become my final perspective on surviving family betrayal and attempted murder. The key is choosing response over reaction, purpose over revenge, and building safety with people who value your life rather than threatening it. Have you ever had to cut ties with family members who didn't respect your boundaries or safety? The hardest lesson I learned was that family relationships require mutual respect and protection. Titles alone don't create trustworthiness. I'd love to hear your thoughts on setting healthy boundaries with toxic family members in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding justice in difficult circumstances. Share this with anyone who might benefit from understanding how to recognize medical abuse or toxic family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my story and supporting advocacy for people with medical vulnerabilities. Remember that your safety and well-being matter more than maintaining relationships with people who threaten or exploit your health conditions. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never apologize for protecting yourself from dangerous individuals, even when they're family.